Hey there, welcome back. I am here with my friend and fellow astrologer, Kris Journey of Journey Woman Astrologer. We're here with your monthly goddess horoscope forecast for the month of May. May, I think, is a pretty exciting month. We've got Jupiter square Pluto. We've got eclipses to kick us off this month. And speaking of eclipses, if you stay tuned a little bit later, we will go through the signs and tell you what you might expect, give you some idea about what you might expect with the eclipses going through your chart based on your sign. So welcome back, Kris. It's so good to have you as always.
Thank you, Taylor. It's great to be here. Looking forward to May.
Yeah. So what are your first impressions of May? Like, what do we got to look forward to? What's going on?
Well, uh, you know, we've got the eclipses this month, or we've got one eclipse, and we're coming out of the most recent one, and we've got Venus in Cancer, Venus sextile Jupiter starting out the month, that I think could be really sweet. It's a nice way to start off May. Very romantic, imaginative, creative transit there. And we've got Mars moving into Leo, and we've got a sort of conglomeration of Mars, Jupiter, Pluto in the second half of May that looks like it could be pretty exciting. So yeah, I think interesting month.
Yeah. So should we start with the eclipses that are happening on the 5th of May, or you want to start 1st of May and let folks know what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, we can just go over the first few days, do you think? And then we can get to the eclipse conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah. And I think May 1st is a great place to start because we've got a lot going on that day. It's a pretty big day. We've got a Mercury cazimi. So Mercury gets to ask the sun for what it wants. We've got Juno, the planet of partnership and righteous indignation, or not planet, the asteroid goddess of like righteous indignation, partnership, and loyalty, moving from Taurus, which likes values and creature comforts, into Gemini, where it likes information and being social and doing everything twice. And then Pluto, this really slow moving outer planet that just moved into Aquarius. This station retrograde is marking us going back in time and thinking about how we have been behaving and what has changed or not changed or solidified, or where power dynamics are in the world since 2008 when Pluto was in Capricorn, because this retrograde, it's not going to stay in the sign of Aquarius. It's going to move back into Capricorn, right?
Yeah, Pluto hanging out at 0 Aquarius, 29 Cap, 28 goes back to 27 Cap in September, and finally stations direct in October, October 11. So these degrees, anybody who's got anything aspecting 0 Aquarius and the very late degrees of Capricorn, we're getting a serious workout from Pluto this year and next year. It's going to hit the same degrees all over again.
Yeah. So what are the kinds of things that folks can expect when Pluto does stuff to their chart? Because I think we'll all feel it on a mundane level, meaning all of society. When Pluto stations retrograde, I think it has to do with the monetary system, has to do with their political leaders, governments, really big national news sort of things. And it can also be earthquakes or, unfortunately, other natural earth-based disasters, because it's like shaking. Pluto can shake the earth in one way or another. And Aquarius, it could be a COVID surge, right? Because Aquarius is air, and we saw that the Saturn Jupiter conjunction with Pluto and Capricorn, but then we had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius. It was like, it's all about COVID. So could be something like that. I know we saw in Africa a few months ago another like pandemic potentially illness coming out where they were closing borders and stuff. So curious what you think, like either on a mundane level or a personal level with Pluto stationing.
Yeah, to me, this is about um Pluto moving into Aquarius is such a tectonic shift. I think you said last month that it's like we've got to take our time with it. It's a slow, gradual process, and I think that's going to be the case with anybody who for whom Pluto is aspecting their chart or at these degrees over the next couple of years, um, because it's this is change like not on a surface level. Um, it's profound change with Pluto, right? It gets to the deepest layers, and we were talking about this that as you're shifting patterns in your life, you're breaking habits, you're coming out of what in yoga they call samskaras, in yoga philosophy they call samskaras, which I love because it's the idea that we get into these grooves, and it's like it becomes easy to stay on that track. Well, Pluto is here, sort of, I think, in individual lives, sort of, and it depends on the aspects that Pluto is making to your chart. If you've got a trine, a sextile, these changes are going to feel supportive. They're going to feel, you might feel like you're moving out of your comfort zone a bit, but it's going to be into a more positive place because Pluto is empowering. Pluto encourages us to change. Our beliefs around whatever it's aspecting in our chart. If it's a square, if it's an opposition, if it's a conjunction, those aspects can go either way. They might be a little more tense, but they don't necessarily have to be. But either way, Pluto is about changing, I think, at the very deepest level. It gets to really profound stuff. And
Yeah,
on a mundane level too, I think my personal hope is that we're saying goodbye to the patriarchy, to white supremacy, and it's just going to take some time, a little
yeah.
bit of time.
And I mean, that's not going to happen overnight, right? Like eclipses mark a turning point, they mark a shift. And it would be nice. It will be nice. It might still take 400 years, but I
Yeah,
think,
I really think Pluto and Capricorn, though, it's like, to me, it's the death of the old guard. It's the death of people like Jeffrey Epstein, of, Weinstein or whatever. I mean, I feel like that behavior, what's his name? Harvey
oh,
Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein. And was it Jeffrey Epstein?
Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny that they have similar names, but yeah, I really feel like my personal hope is that behavior like that will never be tolerated again.
Tolerated, right? It might happen, but not tolerated. And also seen like any attempt at that behavior would be seen as like a cry for help and addressed as such so that folks that need healing. I heard there's some viral reel going around and someone uh you know whoever's speaking is saying there's no such thing as a person that's too needy. If I was in the desert and I was starving, and I think he even says like I would be drinking my own urine for 30 or 40 days just to stay hydrated, and I get to an inn and there's like water and beer and like a bowl of pasta. He's like, I don't talk to anyone, I wolf that down and I ask for more. And he's like, that's kind of what, there's so many people in society like that today who are just starving for attention or love or affection or touch or this or that. And unfortunately, it's coming out in this patriarchal, capitalist, violent way where people are forcibly taking and expressing their hurt and their pain out on other people in a variety of ways, whether that's with weapons. They're all weapons. It's just what kind of weapon? Is it a gun? Is it your body? Is it your words? Is it your power? Is it your money? Is it your non-disclosure agreement? Is it your 40 hours of work? You know, is it interest rates? Is it your mortgage? Is it, it's
Yeah.
all violent,
I
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that it's that level of twisted, that level of heinous, I think is like in a special category. Um, that's difficult and maybe like a whole nother topic to sort of get in if we wanted to get into like why people like that
Do
happen.
yeah,
And I do think it has to do with like severe childhood trauma. Um, but it's interesting because I think like um to me it's a really important distinction to say, yeah, we've all had childhood trauma. That doesn't make all of us psychotic, you
right.
know. And so, I just think there's a point distinction there.
Right. I think it's just the context of society, which makes certain things quote unquote permissible or not even permissible, but possible, I think is a better way to put it, because of the levers that are available to people and those that aren't. The levers of power. And so Pluto is not only about power and control, it's also about comfort, right? So I think when you come from a place of comfort and discomfort, then you get to say, I want this or I want that. And you become very fixed in your opinions because you're pretty damn sure this is going to make you comfortable and this is going to make you uncomfortable. And comfort is, I think, one of the levers of power, right? Power dynamics, because power is all about getting what you want. And usually what you want is what you think is going to make you comfortable. So I think that we're going to find a lot of folks feeling uncomfortable. And then a lot of people fighting for holding on to what makes them comfortable or what makes what they think will keep them comfortable, which is why we get stuff like with Pluto moving through Capricorn, making America great again, for example, right? Because that's what people think will make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, to me, it just has to do with the abuse of power, which we talked about. But and I think that that's what's no longer going to be tolerated with Pluto and Aquarius, is that we're moving to a place where there's going to be greater transparency, there's going to be greater accountability, there's going to be that this stuff can't hide in the shadows anymore, because people, the individual person in Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius, has a voice, has power, is empowered with Pluto. Um, so
Yeah.
I hope we start sharing the wealth. Sound like a commie, um, but
I think
but
that,
I
words like that are just another tool of oppression, to say like, oh, you're red or you're pink or you're pinko. My mom's always like, oh yeah, pinkos, that was the thing. And it's like, what a word that's like a tool of like oppression, like turning it into something that it's totally not, it's like, so what if you are a commie? Because it's not the same. Like commies are actually fascists and communism and all of that is really just like being human. I think is like making sure that people have an equitable share of what they need to get their needs met, going back to that whole thing of like there is no such thing as a needy person.
Yeah, yeah. How many people in this world are just struggling to survive for basic necessity? That's kind of what came out of that story, for me too. But what I just saw recently is this movie Triangle of Sadness. I forget the director's name, but it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. I believe it was last year, 2022, it won the Palme d'Or. And it's a Pluto in Capricorn versus Pluto in Aquarius movie. There's a scene where Woody Harrelson is fighting with this actual Russian capitalist, and they're trading Marx quotes and Reagan and Thatcher quotes. And they're just drinking and they're drunk, but they're like spitting these quotes back and forth at one another, and it's very funny, and also this like has this sort of it stops short of didactic, of being too much on the political front, because it is so funny. But yeah, it's a great movie. I suggest anyone watch it because I think it's about there's some fantastic plot twists. And it's about the shifts in power, this old guard literally dying off in some cases, but also losing their power, even if it has to be pried out of their hands. Because sometimes that's the only way power shifts. And, you
Yeah.
know, when you think about unions, the only way workers get the rights that they deserve is sometimes through a union. So
And
anyway,
speaking of which, May 1st is International Labor Day. Was created in the 1800s, probably around the time we had that Jupiter Neptune conjunction that we had last year. So it's really interesting that we're talking about this again, but it is about back then they had a 16-hour workday, and there was an international strike so that folks would get an 8-hour workday. And I think that with quiet quitting and the economy and layoffs and executive pay being absolutely exorbitant, when there are other folks who are, like you mentioned, really fighting hard to meet their basic necessity, needs, basic needs, that it's actually like messed up that in the US our Labor Day is in like the first Monday of September, but there is an International Labor Day, and I think that is another tool to keep us separated, to strip us of our power, Pluto and Aquarius, so that we don't join hands with the world to raise up the status of the wage laborer.
everyday person who keeps this world.
How many Americans know? If you know about International Labor Day and you're in America or the Americas, like Canada, Mexico, US, let us know like where you're from. Even if you're not, let us know where you're from and if you knew that May 1st is International Labor Day, because I'm super curious.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good Pluto example. I don't mind talking about it. My Venus, as you may recall, is at 29 Virgo. So Pluto is trining my Venus for 2 straight years now, like off and on. And this is like it's interesting,
Wait, Pluto, wait, you said your Venus is at
29 Virgo.
Oh,
So this
Virgo.
29 Cap 0 Aqua, like Aquarius, it gets exact on my Venus, but for months this year, and then it comes back for months next year. And yeah, and it's like I think in a case like this where you've got a trine or a sextile, it's about a slow, gradual shift, a rethinking of whatever that planet represents. For me, I think it might be about opening to certain relationships that I have struggled with in the past. So yeah, I don't know. That's just it's a fun example though, that if if it's hitting your chart, it's happening for a long time, like practically all of this year, all of next year. And I use 1 degree orb. That's what I use when I consult with clients. And so I say, pay attention to these transits when they're within a 1 degree orb. Because that's historically, that's when I see events associated with the transit happen. But I know that some astrologers will say that this Pluto transit is in orb from the minute it gets to that 1 degree until the very last pass, when it moves out of 1 degree. So this could be like this is a several year transit if it's aspecting something in people's chart.
Totally. So. And if it's an opposition, a square, conjunction, it can be really challenging. So just want to acknowledge that for folks. Like if you're feeling it, you're feeling it. I'm not going to prime you with what it feels like. But if you're feeling it, come talk to me or Kris. We'll help you
out. Yeah. And just to mention too, like positive examples, who I noticed was having a strong Pluto transit, and I don't recall if it was like Pluto square the sun, or Pluto square Mars, or Pluto opposite the sun. But I don't know if you know these fixer-upper folks, Chip and Joanna Gaines. Well, I was curious about their astrology, and I happened to see that Chip was having a strong Pluto transit. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. And at the same time, I saw an interview with him where he was sort of saying, like, we've grown so fast that he said, I'm worried about our customer service because I got people, he said, I had somebody write to me and they said that they weren't happy with the wicker basket that I sold them or whatever. And he was expressing in this interview how upset that made him feel, because he genuinely wants people to be happy with the products that they're getting, which is obviously he's trying to be a businessman with integrity. I think that's fantastic. But it struck me that this Pluto square the sun or opposite the sun, whatever it was, I don't recall, was like him, in a tense relationship with struggling to adjust to the level of power that they now have in their lives.
That's super interesting. So Pluto square would be like end of Aries or end of Libra, or beginning of Taurus or beginning of Scorpio.
Yeah. And so it's interesting how the tension can manifest. Like, it doesn't always have to be because you could see Pluto on the sun as being like someone transitioning, male to female.
Well, I mean, I had Pluto on my sun in 2020, and I certainly have transitioned my life in many ways. So, I mean, I also had Saturn and Jupiter there at the same time, the day of my solar return. Or no, the day before my solar return, 2 days before my birthday. So it's pretty interesting how Pluto can change your life. And if you know what, you're willing to make some changes, it can be pretty cool, because you can make some really amazing changes in your life for the positive. And I feel like with any transit, if there's pain, it just going back to that whole thing about comfort and control, it's just like, yeah, it's uncomfortable because this thing isn't meant for you, and you're meant to find what is going to be more comfortable for you. But you got to go through, like, when I was 7, Saturn's opening square, and I was growing, my shins hurt so bad when my bones were growing. My body hurt so bad when my bones were growing and I was getting tall. It hurt so bad. Growth is not the spa.
Pluto trine your Venus, though, it's again, it's like feeling a little bit out of that comfort zone. I don't know how I feel about this, but the nice thing is, I do think, like, because Pluto is taking its time, it's going to be here for a long time. I feel like none of us, we don't need to rush change.
Yeah.
It's going to be here for a long time, like really this year and next year. And I like that about Pluto, because it reflects the actual process of reflection, like what it actually takes to bring about real change in our lives. It's not instant. It's not a quick fix. It's not instant gratification. It actually takes time to work through, like, samskaras, and change them.
So what is samsara for people that don't know?
Yeah, so it's comes from Indian philosophy. I've encountered it in yoga philosophy as part of learning from my yoga teachers. And it's the literal translation is like grooves. But they are like mental impressions, recollections, psychological imprints. It's just the habits we get into. So if we get into a habit, say, of every time we're upset, we call our mother and have a nice conversation. that's a nice habit. But if we get into a habit of we're upset and we have a cigarette, you know, then you know, so these grooves, these habits we can get into can be positive or negative.
You know
Uh,
what that is in the chart?
it
Habits are third house, sixth house, ninth house, 12th house. The third house is like your daily movement habits. The sixth house is your daily work and health habits. The ninth house is your daily ritualistic, spiritual, religious, legal habits, philosophical habits. And the 12th house are those habits that keep you from your own greatness. But that is the axis of habits.
and I would say the moon as well.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
And
because
any of the planets that rule those houses for you in particular, but also just the you know, like the natural chart.
just in the sense that so much of
Maybe
our
Mercury,
habits
Jupiter,
and patterns, sorry,
which like Mercury and Jupiter would be another way of putting it. Like if you look at the natural chart, just like, you know, Aries is the first house and Gemini is the third house.
yeah,
You know, Virgo is the sixth, Sag is the ninth, and Pisces is the 12th. Those signs are ruled by Mercury and Jupiter. So
right. Yeah, no, and I just make that point because I feel like so much of our habits and patterns are about safety, our emotional needs, trying to meet our emotional needs in whatever way, whether it's in a healthy way or a less than healthy way. Um, but but um, yeah, and so the samskaras become the basis of karma, right? Like your uh your thoughts become your deeds become your actions become your destiny, that sort of thing.
mm, Dharma and Karma, which is another third and sixth house thing. And it's Mars too. Mars is your Dharma, the nodes are your karma. So this is interesting looking at this through like different planets, different houses, different signs, different lenses.
It's totally interesting. Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. That idea of like look at the third, look at the sixth, the 12th.
And then yeah.
Yeah. Um, but and maybe the eighth too, if you want to dig into some more.
Oh yeah, like the psychological reasons behind your habits
Yeah. So did it
and the debt
Scorpio.
that it creates for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how other people's resources could support or actually support, and whether that support results in a positive thing or results negatively. The eighth house is like how your thoughts and how other people's resources support your habits too.
You know, and it makes me think also of something our friend Denise Springer talks about in she's a somatic experiencing practitioner, and in somatic experiencing, and I was thinking about this the other day, they a really helpful concept in trauma therapy that's come out of this somatic experiencing modality is capacity. So sometimes we, you know, um, so the idea that if you had a rough early life and you're you know dealing with maybe adult CPTSD, something along those lines, the the imprints of trauma may make it difficult for you to recognize something good when it comes along. Um, and so we actually some people, many of us, we have to actually build capacity for the positive in our lives. Um, and there's a guy I actually have taken some classes with, Luis Mojica, and he says the point, and he's also a somatic experiencing practitioner, and one of the things that he says is there's no such thing as self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is about capacity. Um, so this good thing lands on your doorstep, and you're like, no, I can't do that because that's not, you know, I don't think I'm worth, maybe I'm not worth it, or that's not what I haven't done that in the past, or whatever. And um, and you know, I think that this Pluto transit at these degrees is about potentially, and this is just one of the points I would make for folks is that if it is aspecting an important part of your chart, like take your time because it's going to be here for a long time, and And so the way to develop capacity in somatic experiencing is with titration. And so you just, give yourself 5 minutes and say, what if I accepted this gift from the universe? 5 minutes, I'll just think about what would that feel like. And then you get up and you stop thinking about it, you go do something else. Maybe in a week, you come back to it again. Say, what would it feel like if this person who says they're really into me, what if I actually believed them? you know, like, so that it's that titration. You don't have to jump in because that's flooding. You don't have to just like, and that's not healthy either because it's just too much for the system. So that's what my thinking about this Pluto transit is like, take it easy, be gentle on yourself, titrate.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing is, I think it's interesting because pretty soon after that, on May 4th, we have Venus sextile Jupiter and then Venus Neptune. Venus is love, relationships, money. Jupiter expands everything it touches. And so those are the two benefics, the greater benefic, and is it called the minor benefic? I'm having a total brain fart.
I feel like they're both, I just call them both benefics.
And then Venus square Neptune, and Neptune is known as the higher octave of Venus. And so what we can get from this is like a lot of good stuff, but some of the things that can happen are like overspending potentially because like of wanting to indulge in luxury. That's Venus sextile Jupiter, certainly. I'm a victim of that. I have that in my chart. It's a bit of a wide orb, but I absolutely have it with like the North Node at the midpoint. So, I'm not always like that. I'm not like, I don't have like I actually don't have like designer bags or anything like that, but like there's certain things about life that like, I'm like, to me, this is luxury, right? So I think that for folks is like, what to you does luxury mean? Does that mean ordering takeout? Does it mean like sitting in the sun? Does it mean the spa or designer bags or investing in crypto or bullion or taking time off work? Having organic food, having clothing that like feels really nice on your skin. And then Venus square Neptune is where we can feel boundaryless, and we are invited to ensure that our boundaries are in place because we may at times feel like the dream is the dream and it's coming true. And it might be, but it's probably an invitation to understand what your dream is and how reality is not aligning with that, so that you can move towards your dream eventually, but this day and time is probably not the fulfillment of the dream coming true.
Right, Venus square Neptune could be rose-colored glasses, being
Overly
like glamour or romance.
totally.
Not seeing entirely clearly. There's the danger with Venus square Neptune, but it can also be super dreamy, super romantic. It's a great time to do something creative. But yeah, Venus sextile Jupiter. Good things are coming. Good things are on the way. I love that.
Yeah, and I like it as being like between that Pluto station during Mercury retrograde. So Mercury retrograde in Taurus is ruled by Venus sextiling Jupiter and then Venus squaring Neptune. So I think that our communications are certainly going to be influenced by that. This Sunday, we had Mercury retrograde with the moon in Virgo being ruled by that Mercury retrograde. So you're probably cleaning house, hopefully listening to music, having a good time, getting some stuff done. And with this Venus, it's sort of like, oh, I can relax and I can enjoy because I did my work, and I'm a good girl, I'm a good boy, I'm a good person, like I deserve a little reward. Right? So like for me, when I go, okay, so I'll just say this is like terrible, it's not terrible, I'm not gonna judge myself, but like I go to Whole Foods and I like what I like. I didn't always go to Whole Foods, but now I'm in a place where I can go to Whole Foods from time to time. And if I'm gonna get like wine, I just happen right now to like wine that has bubbles in it, which happens to be sparkling. And sometimes it's sparkling as champagne, which actually means it's from the Champagne region of France. So then when I go to the checkout, they're like, what are you celebrating? And I'm like, why do I need an excuse to get something that I enjoy, because it's your perception that this is luxurious, even if it costs $9.99. It might be a $7.99 bottle of something, which is like I could get like, you know, malt liquor for $7.99, or I can get, which maybe the champagne sparkling wine is probably a form of malt liquor if it costs $7.99. But it's like, why do you have to like come up with an excuse to like, and this happens like frequently for me, which might say something, but it's like, you know, like every week or 2 weeks when I go and I buy my stuff, and it's a different cashier, and they're like, what's the celebration? I'm like, it's very nice of you, so thank you for asking if I'm celebrating, because I would love to share. But the first couple times someone asked me, I was like, me, life, being here, being alive, loving life. And then I finally was like, you know what, let me find something that I can celebrate, because there is besides me and besides being alive, there is actually always something to celebrate. So like this last time I went, I was like, actually, yeah, I am celebrating something. I wasn't, but she made me dig into my mind to think about it. And so I think that that's what this like Venus sextile Jupiter and Venus square Neptune can show up as, is like, are other people's perception of you and what you do necessary for your life, or is it a celebration, or is it both and neither at the same time? And so anyway, I guess I was saying it's interesting that it's like you're going to reward yourself after Sunday and cleaning and doing a good job and working hard, and then Pluto's going to station and you might feel some type of way, and you're going to be like, little treat, treat yourself, you know what I mean? And then the next day we have the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, which is like, I absolutely deserve a treat because I'm feeling some type of way, and I just had to buy a 12-pack of Kleenex. So this is me and my retail therapy.
Yeah, I am fully in favor of you know, I had a friend. What's that?
Get receipts so you can take shit back.
Yeah, right. I had a friend actually when I was living in France, and she was Belgian, and she said, I do something that feels luxurious every day. And you know, for her that was just like getting some nice brie, or you know, it doesn't have to be like,
literally just had my little, like, you know, Starbucks has that little pack, and I was gonna like have it here next to me, and it has like a little piece of brie in it, and I was just gonna like snack on that while we talk, because I need a snack. But yes, so F yes to the brie. Get the brie. Get my friend Lisa Werman, she calls it a coochie board. Get your coochie board. Get your charcuterie. Oh, my camera, here we go. Get your coochie board. Get your charcuterie. Treat your coochie. Board. Your coochie board. Anyway.
That is super funny. There you're back. So yeah, anyway, I'm fully in favor. And you know, because I just think life is hard enough. We have a right to enjoy the good when we have it.
Yes. And so we promised folks we would talk about eclipses.
Yeah.
This is happening on May 5th in America. I mean, okay, maybe in Mexico, but I would say probably, I haven't been to Mexico. I don't, you know, so I'm going to say in America, we know this is Cinco de Mayo, which means also very disrespectfully, people calling it Drinko de Mayo. And I say that for context of what I mean, not because I am supporting that, but because, I mean, people are going to be drinking. People going to be drinking because it's Cinco de Mayo, and because we're Americans, and Americans are really disrespectful. And also because it's an eclipse, and people going to be drinking anyway, even if it wasn't Cinco de Mayo. And be careful on the roads. Get your DD means designated driver. I was like, I'm staying in, and then I got invited to a party. So I was like, well, guess I'm going to the party, but
get a lift, or do, you know,
get a lift, you know, be safe. And it's not necessarily like because of you, because if you know about it, you can like be safe and be cautious, but it's really the folks that don't know what's going on out there, who are like, let's get buck wild. Especially because in America, or like this time zone, right, of like everything on this time zone of New York, America's West, it's in the morning. So you're gonna like wake up in the morning and be like, why am I so emotional? I just had the dream, and the dream was blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I said we promised folks we'd talk about the eclipses. So should we chat about what the eclipses mean when they go through?
Yeah. Well, so I was looking ahead and I'm realizing these are the last of, I think we get one more
Yeah,
eclipse.
one more, but this is the last lunar eclipse with the moon in Scorpio on the south node and the sun in Taurus on the north node for about 9.5 years. And then we'll get a sun in Scorpio, moon in Scorpio on the, is it, I think it's moon in Scorpio. Is it moon in Scorpio or moon in Taurus?
So October 14, solar eclipse this year is at 21 Libra. So
first season.
That's the first. And then the second is October 28th. And that one is back.
Scorpio. So that must be a solar to Scorpio. So the sun and the moon will be in Scorpio on the south node, October. This is 25th. I thought it was 28th, but I guess it's 25th. So
I have 28.
28. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling people all year it's 28. So yeah, that is like the final one. And this is the final one that will have like Taurus energy. I mean, the north node will be in Taurus, but you know, having a luminary in Taurus. So I think that brings a little extra intensity. It brings a little extra pressure to really wrap up the story that we started 18 months ago, about a year and a half ago. I gotta tell you, last May, when we had that eclipse, I forget what day it was, but no, we had one May 2nd, May 1st or May 2nd. But I think that one, that was April 30th or May 1st.
April 30th and May 16th.
Was April 30th was a solar eclipse, though, wasn't it?
The solar eclipse on April 30th. Yeah.
2 weeks later, around May 15th, 14th, 15th.
May 16th.
16th was
lunar eclipse.
And I remember watching This Is Us. It was like either end of season 1 or end of season 2, where and you figure out what happened to Papa and why the show is weird. And I don't know, I took it personal, and I just like, all the things that I ever hurt me in my life came up. It was also on my natal moon in Scorpio, so there's that, but it hurt my feelings pretty bad. And I remember sitting out and looking at it was so red, the moon, because I was in Tucson, Arizona, and it was like right there. Like I could look out my balcony. I didn't even have to do anything. It was like just right where my balcony was facing, and I could see it be red. And I was like, oh, no, right now. People were like there was an Amazon guy who came and like delivered at 10 o'clock at night, like when the eclipse is going on. There was like the trash collector came at 10 o'clock that night. I was like, why are you working? And why aren't you crying right now?
You know, at that April 30th, you know, that's when we were hanging out in Tucson for the
yes. But
conference.
the solar eclipse was amazing. It was emotional for some people. I do remember going into the bathroom at that event, and either someone was just crying, and then I walked into the bathroom, and then I was like, oh my gosh, someone's crying. And then I think someone came out of the stall crying, and then I was like, wait, there's 2 people crying. And I was like, I feel great. Like, I feel great. I might cry out of happiness.
There was a Venus-Jupiter conjunction at 27 Pisces that day.
And Neptune.
Yeah, Neptune's at 24. Yep.
Yeah, and that was like at the midpoint of my North Node and Ascendant. So
that was good for both of us. And that's a great segue. Yeah, because that Venus-Jupiter, I mean, was on my descendant practically.
Okay, so let's do it like that. Let's talk about if it's in your 1st or 7th, and then we can just do pairs. Does that sound good?
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good segue to this question of, are eclipses good or bad? Because that one was clearly pretty excellent.
Yeah.
You know, and
So I think so. Like, let's just like address that, and then we'll see how it comes up later. But I just want to say that, like, I think that all transits are for our highest. I think all of life is for our highest and greatest good. I don't think that anything is for bad or for evil. There are things that are evil. I had a reading with Rob Hand, and he was like, evil is just anything that isn't whole or seeks to destroy, right? Well, in that sense, you could call something evil, but when you seek to destroy something, if something isn't meant for you, well, then the thing might be the evil thing. It's not the thing that is destroying the evil. The thing that's destroying the thing that isn't meant for you is actually good and for your greatest and highest good, because I think we experience pain and suffering when we're on the wrong path, and we just need to be forcibly told and forced into let go and move on, because like the lesson is done. Like, you're done here. It's time to do something else, to do something new. And when people don't do it, I think that that's when we experience pain, because it's the only language that we'll understand. It's like, I think the universe goes through many languages and many knocks at the door, like a hey, toodaloo, and then it's like a doorbell, and it's like doorbell, 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 and then it's like a we blew your door down, and now there's like smoke bombs coming in, and the fire alarm's going off.
Let go or get dragged, right? That can be an eclipse message for sure. Yeah. But it can also, I think, really, so I personally, see eclipses as just being turning points. They can mark significant turning points, good or bad. Good or bad. Like an eclipse is like a super powered lunation.
Bad though. Honestly, what is bad? Like,
right. There's a great point.
That is temporary discomfort, in my opinion. And I say that as someone who has been there. Verified, been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
Not going my whole story, but I'm telling you, I've been there.
I know. And also as this like bulletproof Capricorn, I think. Even if you are Pisces rising.
Capricorn, but
well, it's the no pain, no gain philosophy. I mean, where I think I'm like
I wish I could gain pain free. If you'd ask me, I'm happy to gain pain free. I think we all should gain pain free. That's my philosophy, but it hasn't been my experience.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And that's one of the gifts of astrology, right? Is that it helps us hear that light tap at the door instead of waiting for the door to blow down.
Yeah. So what are the light taps that people might experience if the eclipses are happening in their first and seventh house? So if you're a Taurus rising, then the sun is in your first and the moon is in your seventh. And if you're a Scorpio rising, the moon is in your first and the sun is in your seventh. Now, I love what Judith Hill says. And Judith Hill says that usually eclipses happen in the way that they should happen, whereas the south node is the area where you let go, and the north node, which is in Taurus, is where you move towards, but it's how you, someone else says, it's what we don't know yet how to do. We don't have an example of, so it's uncomfortable sometimes to move towards, especially if you are in, as Geert Hofstede says, in a culture that wants high certainty or has a low uncertainty avoidance. You don't want to move towards the north node because you've never been there and you don't know what it looks like, and it's a dark room, right? So if you're Taurus or Scorpio rising, then this is happening in your first and seventh houses, and
fixed signs as well.
And fixed signs, yeah. So that would be Aquarius and Leo. This would be in your fourth and 10th houses. And going back to how I started, Judith Hill says that sometimes you can have what's called a nodal reversal. So usually you move towards the north, you let go with the south node, which is in Scorpio. But sometimes, depending on your life and all of the circumstances, where the north node is can feel like the letting go, and where the south node is can feel like where you haven't done it before and where you're moving towards. So you can have either power surge. You're supposed to have a power surge where the north node is, and you're supposed to have a power outage so that you can let go where the south node is. But sometimes it can feel the reverse. So that's why I think doing this in pairs is super helpful, because you might be like, no, I am starting a relationship, when we're like, oh no, it's time for you to let go. It just depends what is for your highest and greatest good, and what is the thing that's like holding you back, right?
Yeah, and they can manifest differently. I mean, for different people. So an eclipse in the seventh house could be the start of a major relationship, and it could also be the end of a major relationship. You know, and by major, I would say roughly over a year, let's say, or maybe a few months if that's a big deal for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say that, like, when the south node was in my first house and then north node was in my seventh house, that's actually when I ended my long-term relationship. That was the beginning of the end for me. And you would think it would be the opposite, that the north node in the seventh would be like the beginning of a relationship and the letting go of your ego. But no, for me, it was actually the opposite, because that relationship was not allowing me to fulfill my natal potential, which I have the north node in the first and the south node in the seventh. So it just depends. So essentially, first and seventh house is about you, your personality, your appearance, yourself, how you show up in the world, and like the physical composition of your body too. And then the seventh house is about
also, I always like to point out too that it's also our personal projects. It's our ego in a positive sense. It's the projects we care about. And so when, the sun's moving through the first house, Mars moving through the first house, anything, any of the planets moving through the first, there's going to be a focus on, it's like a me kind of house. But usually it's
in a good way, the good
in
kind
a
of,
good way, in a healthy way, because to the extent that we all need to put ourselves first sometimes. We all
but
need a
right,
healthy ego,
but and
a healthy
also,
sense of self.
yeah,
Yeah.
but and also, if you are feeling pain in your first house for some reason, that's probably the unhealthy ego, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I've really seen it, like Venus moving through the first house, you're feeling good. You're feeling good about who you are, you know. You're
Venus,
Venus, yeah, Venus moving through the first.
but
Like,
Venus is going to be in Gemini and then Cancer.
sure, yeah, but just as an example, like
Oh,
of the effect of transits on the first house. And so an eclipse in the first house could be, to me, so with this Taurus Scorpio example, if you're Taurus rising, right, like, and you've got this eclipse, no, so you would be Scorpio rising to have the eclipse in your first house, um, the
no,
May 5th eclipse.
yeah.
Yeah,
The moon would be Scorpio, yeah.
yeah. So then, and it's where the moon is that you pay attention to. I mean, it's this axis that's always activated, but for me, I pay attention to the house that the moon falls in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but so yeah, so if you're Scorpio rising, this May 5th eclipse is falling in your first house. And so it could just be a time where you're like suddenly filled with energy, ambition, renewed inspiration, to do something that you think is cool, that you're excited about. Maybe it's about the opposite end of the axis. If the first and seventh are self and other, the first can be about healthy individuation. So I often see that when planets move through the first, or where there's an eclipse in the first, that it's about rediscovering the self, rediscovering the things that are important to me after maybe a period of time when we let them go.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. And I think the other important thing to remember about full moons, and I'll just give credit where credit is due. I got this from Stormy Grace because I studied the progressed lunar cycle with her and the natal lunar cycle with her, and she got a lot of her material from Dane Ridjar and others. The full moon invitation is to release, as we know. But I think that the key detail that release doesn't capture fully is to let go of the noise and to let go of the distraction so that you can really focus on what the goal is and achieve the goal. So it's not letting go of everything and then everything goes to shit. It's getting rid of the noise and getting rid of the distraction so you can be really clear on your path just like you and I are sitting here, like I see you, right? Like I see you sitting across from me, like everyone else might see both of us or just me, depending on how Zoom does this, but it's sitting across the table and getting rid of like everyone in the cafe, right? Like all of the non-main characters in our life to focus on the one thing that's in front of you.
Yeah, like eclipses can do that. Like
That can happen with your projects, that can happen with your ego, that can happen with your committed partnerships or business partnerships. It might not mean that you're letting go of the partner or the partnerships, it's that you're letting go of like the extraneous stuff that's getting in the way of the point that you need to be focusing on.
Yeah, and I also think it can just highlight the area of focus for this particular, and you know, general, a good rule of thumb with eclipses is that they can you might feel them actually a few months beforehand, even, and they maybe about 6 months after, until the next eclipse season, essentially. But they can mark, like I said, pivotal points that affect years of your life. I have seen. So, you know, and the funny thing with the seventh, and a lunation or an eclipse in the seventh house, I tell my clients and I have seen this repeatedly, that it's a good indication of the start of a serious relationship, a lunation or an eclipse in the seventh. This is about serious relationship. Yeah. So I'm like, you know, if you're looking for a relationship and this is in your seventh, somebody might be around the corner for
Me
you.
gusta, me gusta. Not that
Yeah.
like anyone I know or that I'm involved with has that going on. I mean, you know, not like that would impact me a bit better, but you know.
Yeah,
See,
but like you said, it could be. I know. I really did. It's like, to me, it's a strong indicator of a relationship coming along.
actually, actually, not in whole sign. This is happening. This is happening in my first house. This is
Is
happening.
it? Yeah.
Not
In
by
whole
whole
sign?
sign, but by all of the other houses. My first house goes into early Taurus. It starts in like Pisces and goes into early Taurus.
There we go. There we go. Yeah. See. So your Placidus, your first house?
No, I use Reggio Montanus, and I think it goes. I forget what degree, if it's like 10 Taurus or 7 or something like that, but I think it's like first decan of Taurus, my first house goes in. So like
Taurus is in your first. Yeah, that's right.
it is, yeah.
Because Aries is
By whole
intercepted.
sign, it's my third. So that's why like I put out the podcast and you know I'm doing all of this publishing and stuff like that. But at the same time, that is a first house thing because it is me being seen by other
Personal
people.
projects, ambition. Yeah.
See,
Yeah. In which we discuss whole sign versus Placidus, and that's what's interesting too with eclipses. You can play with the house system and take a look and see what resonates for you.
yeah, both and especially if you're like me and have an anoretic, which is 26, 27, 28, 29. It's really 27, 28, 29, but I'll give 26 because I'll even give like 20, you know, like last decan of any sign, you're really gonna like feel the shift between whole sign and quadrant houses in your chart. And I think you're gonna feel the blend more than other people.
Yeah. And it's just a good way to play around with like what house system appeals to you. What do you resonate with?
Yeah.
To start looking.
Okay, so then the next step would be if the eclipses are happening in your second and eighth house. So that means that you are what?
I can speak to this one because this
Yeah.
is happening for me.
So an rising or a Libra rising by whole sign is going to be in the second and the eighth, but you could be in a Virgo Pisces or not an Aquarius. Yeah, you could be in Aquarius. It just depends. You could be I do know Aquarius risings who are having this happen in their second and eighth house.
Okay.
So yeah.
So yes, you do want to, all you need is your chart, and the May 5th eclipse is happening at 14 Scorpio. So wherever 14 Scorpio is in your chart, that's where it's happening, and you'll be able to know the house just by finding the degree at 14 Scorpio. But yeah, so second and eighth, this is probably pretty strongly about money. This is about either you're making money if the lunation is in your second house, or you're paying off debt if the lunation is in your eighth house, if the eclipse is in your eighth house, if that 14-degree Scorpio point falls in your second, that's the money house. The eighth house, that 14-degree Scorpio is in your eighth, that's about debt. It's also maybe about other people's finances. So maybe it's about getting a loan. Maybe it's about applying for a bank loan, asking somebody for a loan. So yeah, this is about money, finances, debt, other people's money. And with the second house also, it could be the second house can be self values. It could be value. So it could be about self-worth. And
I think that Taurus and Scorpio in general, like we should just say, like, this is a natal. So if you were to look at natural houses, Taurus is naturally associated with the second and Scorpio is naturally associated with the eighth, but for everyone, it's going to be different. But if you're an Aries rising, you go with the natural houses. And so that's why you kind of get like a doubling up of the meaning here. And unless you're Libra, Virgo, or a Libra or Virgo rising, right? Or Leo rising, and this is in your second and eighth, because then it would be like the opposite, but it's still the same. So I think that it's also about the resources that we have that support our mental health. And so I'm trying to be big on it. Maybe I haven't been as big on it as I wanted or could be or whatever, but not could, but wanted to be. I do think it's about, like, do we make enough money to provide for our needs so that our mental health is taken care of? Because Taurus is about our material security and Scorpio is about our emotional security. And sometimes that emotional security is tied up in our mental health and well-being. So
love that.
Yeah.
And just the basic point that basic necessities, or having a certain level of material comfort, being able to meet our basic needs and have a little bit more, is essential to mental health.
Yeah, and it's not just like money, it's resources that provide for you, whether it's other people's resources or your own resources. But there are 8 forms of capital. So it could be your spiritual capital, your social capital, financial capital,
political,
what?
Yeah. Political, maybe.
Political, material, like all of the things. Like, do you have the capital? And some of the capital could be, do you have a health insurance plan, right? Do you have a retirement plan? Do you have a 401k? Do you have a house? Do you have access to food? Do you live in a food desert?
This is very Taurian. Yeah, taking care of basic needs. And so that's this second house, eighth house axis. If this is happening for you, you're working hard. Congratulations. Get that debt paid off. I'm proud of you. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about the 3rd and the 9th?
This is one of my favorites because by whole sign I've been having this for the past year and a half, and it's all about communication, memory, the mind, and publishing. But it can also be about the law and legal issues. It can be about philosophy and higher education. And so I moved from a role in higher education to a philosophically different role as an astrologer and an advisor and a counselor, which is also a 9th house thing. I changed, it can be like where you go to school. So higher education can also just be like the teachers that you have, right? Is your teacher your preacher? Is your teacher your lawyer? Is your teacher another kind of advisor or counselor? What is your philosophy? Is your philosophy based on religion or spirituality or the law? Is it based on your culture and cross-cultural? Is it influenced by cross-cultural influences or people? Because it's long-range travel, it's globalization.
The 9th house associated with Sagittarius, sign Sagittarius, and with Jupiter. Yeah.
Yes. And then the 3rd house is like our memory, our communication, our siblings, our neighbors, our aunties and uncles and cousins, and lower school and primary education. So, and like basic literacy sort of things, whereas like the 9th house is more like the stuff you do with higher education, more like you're synthesizing and you're developing new ideas and then publishing them out into the world. But how it manifests for people today is like, either you go on a vacation to another country, you meet someone from another country or another state, and their like culture is very different from you. Like if someone from California met someone from Washington, D.C., the culture is very different. Or like New York City and Arkansas, Texas, very different. I've been there. And then different languages as well. Language is a big thing on both the 3rd and the 9th house. And I want to say, like, that language includes astrology, that language includes permaculture, that language includes tarot, that language includes computer programming. That language can be many things. So we need to think creatively about how different languages play in. It can be body language, right? It can be love language. So we need to think about what language means to us. And it can be teachers and letting go of teachers or moving towards new teachers or becoming a teacher ourselves, even if we don't have the formal title of teacher. But what we're sharing with folks.
So I love all this. Yeah.
I just want to say, I love it because it's also about publishing books, publishing a podcast, publishing a YouTube, publishing a blog, publishing an email newsletter, publishing a white paper. It's about like the 9th house. Yeah, it's book, getting your stuff out into the world. And that's what I really love to encourage people, not only to do, but like it, at a minimum to think about and to consider, like, what is, like, just ask yourself, what is the thing that you would, your memoir would be about, would be maybe like 3rd house, but like, what would it be that you would publish and put out into the world?
Yeah, that's a 3rd, is the writing, the speaking, the communication. So if this lunation happening in your 3rd, you could be finding yourself in front of an audience in a new way, or in an expanded way.
Yeah, and so like if you're an entrepreneur, like, come chat with me, check out my website because I've got a lot of offerings for you to like figure out how to do this for yourself. And also get yourself a ghostwriter, get yourself a virtual assistant, get yourself ChatGPT, get yourself bard.google.com, get yourself some things to support you, get yourself a course on how to publish, get yourself, treat yourself so that you can get this done. We need to hear from you.
Artists, I have to just quickly voice the artist vote on AI, and it's, it's complicated. But yeah, absolutely. And then 9th house, I would say that if this 14 Scorpio is falling in your 9th, that you may be taking a trip. You may be, going back to school. You may be becoming a teacher yourself.
And figure in extra time for delays, figure in extra money for extra expenses based on the fact that there's a delay and you need an extra night at the hotel and extra food. And you thought you were going to get your ass groceries. You ain't getting your ass groceries, not tonight, because you're going to be in Ireland still. You're not going to be back in Boston yet. Like, that's just what's going to happen. So, and I've talked with a lot of clients where this is the case. And I say, think back 9.5 years ago and think back, 19 years ago, what happened? And they're like, oh my God, I was in the airport in Dublin and I'm going to be there again. Like, yeah, that's just how it goes. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the 9th house, it's like travel either physically. So yeah, you could be moving to a foreign country, or mentally. Yeah. So it could be, going to grad school or.
Yes, that is what happened to one of my friends. And she traveled abroad and then was like, ended up in grad school in a foreign country. It was like the most beautiful thing. And now she's,
it is,
my dear heart, love her. Because of that eclipse, changed the trajectory of her life and my life because I met her there.
Mm-hmm. Very
All
cool.
right, so 4th and 10th, this is very similar, as you pointed out earlier, to the 1st and 7th, because when you get into a 1st and 7th thing, either your identity, your personality, your public image, like your public projects change, or your spouse, your business partner changes. And then what does that change? It changes your 4th and 10th. So it can go that your 4th and 10th changes because of your 1st and 7th, or your 1st and 7th changes because of your 4th and 10th. And 4th and 10th, 4th is home, family, real estate, ancestors, ancestor work and worship. So like talking to your ancestors and asking them for help with things like your own home and residential real estate, but it's also commercial real estate I'm seeing more and more. especially for entrepreneurs who are looking at like monetizing that as an income, you know, part of their portfolio to then eventually achieve their dreams. You know, give them that Taurian support so that they actually can like have that basic income need met by the passive income that real estate brings to them, or they're moving. And then 10th house, it is your legacy, it is your title. And so if you're getting married, 7th house, you become a MR dot or an MRS dot, right? You become a Mr. or Mrs. And sometimes you'll change or hyphenate your name, or you become known as the spouse of so-and-so, right? That is a public title change.
Yeah,
You become direct for whatever, right? In your job.
I was just reminded of the also the courtesy title, MX period.
Thank
Say
you.
it mix.
Yes. Thank you. All of that.
Oh.
All
But
of it.
the relationship affects your status. Our culture being what it is, valuing relationship, a relationship will affect your status.
And it affects how you will be remembered. You will be remembered, whether you get divorced or not, whether you keep that job for your life or not, as you'll be remembered as the spouse of or the former spouse of. You will be remembered as the one-time director or assistant director or coordinator of, colleague of.
Yeah, the 10th house being like how we're known for posterity.
Yeah, your legacy. And the 4th house is the things that you remember, that then, you know, like the memory that supports your root and growth system so that you can become something that then becomes someone else's 4th house eventually.
I forget who says this, that somebody says the I see should be called I don't see, because the 4th house is like the things that are sort of hidden. You know, it's our internal life, it's our private home, whereas the 10th house is what's visible. It's out in the world. So we can't hide what's in the 10th house.
But you can think about, and I think it's really important for people to think about what they want their 10th house story to be, because that is what we actively work towards in this lifetime. It happens as we happen, it happens as we live. But I think that it's important for us all to know that we are consciously participating in our own legacy creation actively in every single moment with every breath we take. So if that's something you're interested in, come check me out, because I can help you out with that. I do a lot of visualization for people. You know, think about what you want your legacy to look like. Like, what do you want your best life to look like? Because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what your goal is, my Capricorn sun over here, you will never get there. And I don't say that rude. I don't say that mean. I just say it as a fact. Like, how could you possibly get to Montana if you don't know you're going to Montana? You're not going to stumble in. You're not going to stumble into Montana. It's not going to happen. So just know, figure out that you want to be on Montana or Hawaii or Japan.
So I think is like, if we don't take control of our lives, other things will control us.
Yeah. And that's where the pain and the suffering comes from, because it's like, hey, redirection. And it's like, how about we stop getting redirected and we direct ourselves, because we know exactly where that north node point of the arrow is going.
You know, one of the reasons I like Placidus, this is one of my arguments for the use of Placidus personally. I'm not getting into a big discussion about it. Now, I know you don't, we're agnostic over here. We accept all the house systems,
yes.
but like
the D9, because I just don't know how to read that chart yet. I don't know how to read a Amsha chart. Sorry. Teach me.
Yeah, it's down the road someday. But one of the reasons I like Placidus is, you know, I tell clients when they're curious about their 10th house, like, well, what are the signs in the 10th house in a Placidus chart for you? What's on your midheaven? And what's the co-ruler of your 10th? And sometimes you might have 3 signs in your 10th house if there's a intercepted sign. So all 3, you know, if you have one sign, you know, in your 10th, 2 signs in your 10th house, 3 signs in your 10th, maybe 4 is even possible. I'm not sure. I've seen up to 3.
Oh, 4 is absolutely possible if you were born in an extreme latitude.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
whatever those signs are, I without fail find that people resonate with those, with the themes associated with those signs. And so if you take both of them, funny enough, the one on the midheaven does tend to be the more influential, but the co-ruler of the other sign in the falls in the 10th, the other sign or 2 or however many, those signs all kind of have something to say about work possibilities. So I just
Yeah.
think that's an interesting point
And I was
about
talking
you
with
are looking for direction.
yeah, and I was talking with my friend astrologer Lisa Warman about this the other day, and she was like, "Hey, I have a theory. Like, I think that." She's like, "Do you know this to be true?" And I was like, "Tell me." And she's like, "Well, I think that the ruler of the intercepted sign, and if it's one that has a modern co-ruler, you could look at both the traditional and the modern ruler, like the planet that rules that sign. So for Pisces, it would be Neptune and Jupiter. You find the house and then like the aspects, especially the aspect to like the opposite sign, which would be Mercury, right? So if it's Virgo, Mercury, Pisces, Virgo, Mercury, Jupiter, Neptune, and then you sort of like unlock that, you like understand what's going on, what is the story of the intercepted sign, and then the planet and the house and the sign the planets are in. That's sort of how you quote unquote unlock your intercepted houses, because intercepted means it's difficult for the native, which means the person or entity that owns the chart, to access. And I know Jessica Lanyadoo says it's difficult to access because between before your birth and age 7, something happened that told you a story that it was unsafe for you to do that thing, behave in that way. So because a parent was
Whatever's associated with the intercepted sign.
yes, like unjustly punished for behaving in that way. So like if it's a Mercury thing, like 3rd and 9th house, especially like Cancer or something like that, it's like the mother wasn't able to say what she needed to say. And so now you don't speak up for yourself and share your opinion when you should, because you think your head's going to get chopped off or something like that, which, for the most part is probably not true.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting, but even if it's intercepted, that sign still influences. So even if it does feel a little bit harder to reach, that sign is still an influence. So,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I do see that. But at any rate,
And 11th, right?
what's that?
The 5th and 11th house, I think, is next.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say to wrap up on the 4th 10th axis is, if the moon, if 14 degrees Scorpio falls in your 4th house, I have frequently seen a lunation or an eclipse falling in the 4th, having to do with something to do with the home, the actual physical home. Yeah, whether you're moving, you're doing
You move
major.
for a spouse because the spouse got a new job, which is like 7th and 10th, and so you move. Or like your parent 4th and 10th is sick, so you like move, or you move them into your house, or you sell your house. Or like if Mars is also there at the same time, like there was a leak in your pipes and you got to move out. You know what I
I
mean?
have an actual example of this. I had an eclipse 24. There was an eclipse at 24 Sag. When was that? That was Christmas of 2020. And uh and I had just moved into the house where I am now, just a few months before. And I was getting settled, and we had a fire the week before Christmas. And so this wasn't a great, it's a sort of like big picture. I'm moving into this house that has had a huge impact on my life. And, so that was the sort of big picture, I think, of this eclipse on my IC. We did have a fire in the boiler, and we had to get the boiler replaced, and we were without heat in a New England winter or in a New York State winter for upstate New York State winter for like a week. That was really fun. So anyway, but that's a negative example. There are plenty of good examples. Don't take it the wrong way. But it is a fun example of the 4th house. So yeah, so something having to do with the home.
Or
Maybe it's major work. You're getting major work done, construction or renovation. But I have often seen it associated with moving in particular
And
as well.
and parents.
Yeah, yeah, family. You know, because I'm single. For me, it always comes up with a move, physical move.
So basically, if Taurus is your fourth house, you are probably your rising sign is going to be fourth. What?
Scorpio. So the
Leo, Aquarius. Yeah, Leo and Aquarius are going to have Taurus and Scorpio on the fourth and 10th. So if you are, especially if you are having your Uranus opposition or Uranus is triggering stuff in your chart specifically because Uranus is in Taurus and Uranus is natally in your fourth or 10th house, this most likely has to do with a major change in your parents and your home and your job.
Yep.
And hopefully it is for the best and highest and greatest good possible for you and your family.
Yeah. No, so the opposite. I mean, and it can be a good thing when sometimes you're delighted to move. I was delighted to move to this house. It was a blip, that fire. We took care of it. It was uncomfortable, but we took care of it.
Thank God you were okay. That's like really
Yeah. Oh yeah, knock on wood for sure. But yeah, but big picture still, like I'm still in this house years later, and I may buy it. So this was a big deal. This this eclipse on my IC. So but if the moon, if 14 Scorpio falls in your 10th, this one I have seen frequently, like there's some shift at work, and this more often than not is positive. This is like a promotion, this is a new job, this is some new work assignment. I find that when the lunation falls in the 10th, it's a time of significant activity around the job. Positive.
Yeah, when that 24 degrees Sagittarius eclipse that you said, was that solar or lunar? It must have been solar because unless it was a full moon in Taurus.
Let me see when it was.
But either way, you had a home thing happen, and that is, I think, like just about the exact day or the exact like at least 2-week period, lunation period. When I applied, I was like assistant director of HR. I applied for a job to be director of HR, and it was 3 degrees off my natal Saturn, 4 degrees off my natal Uranus, and 5 degrees off my midheaven. And I applied for the job, and I was working in higher education. I was working at an Ivy League university, and I got that job. I put my application in, and I was like, can I do this? Like, are they gonna hire me? Fuck yeah, they hired me. Like, go for it.
Yeah. So that eclipse was December 14th, 2020 at 23 Sag. And yeah, and that also what's really I love about that is that it gives you the orbs. So because your midheaven is at 29 Sag, so actually it's a pretty wide orb.
It was a wide orb, absolutely, yeah. I mean, my Saturn's 27, my Uranus is 28, so it was a pretty wide orb. But it's like at the same time, like those are slow moving planets. So like to have an event as big as an eclipse happen even within 10
6 degrees, yeah,
12 or 13 or 6, like in the house,
true.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that it's pretty valid. And I feel like that's so true for so many people because just the way the universe and the planets work, like things can't always be exact. I met someone who had a full moon square the nodes and the orb was 2, 3, 4, and 5 degrees. And it's like, yeah, but that was the full moon and it was 3 hours after the full moon and they were born. Like they are absolutely born with a grand cross. Like you're not going to sit here and tell me that because the way that the full moon lined up and it wasn't exactly 3 days earlier, so the orb would be 3 degrees, that it's not like their soul knew that this was their work in this life and they did the best they could with the timing, right? Like it's just, yeah, it's just how it works.
So one of the reasons I think I focus on the orb is just to reduce the noise.
The noise, yeah.
Because if you like look at everything within 10 degrees of a lunation or an eclipse, there's just going to be way too much data. But if I've heard some astrologers say that they narrow it, like they use a 5-degree orb. But but clearly, like we just heard that for you, actually it was larger than that. So, and clearly it was affecting a major change in your 10th house. But yeah, that's one reason I focus on the orb, is just like to narrow
Yeah, and
the
I think it depends. Is it an angle and is it an angular house?
point.
Is it like quincunx your Mercury that has nothing to do with the houses that are involved?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the signs that are like, you know what I mean? Is it like a semi sesquiquadrate
Yeah.
with a parallel?
And
You
yeah,
know,
so
like how far are you reaching? Like if it's obvious, it's obvious, and if it's not obvious, don't reach. Essentially, I think this.
and then at the same time, like if it coincides with a significant event, I think it goes the other way. Hey, this is 6 degrees within 6 degrees of your midheaven. And so, what's your 10th house in whole sign? Is it Sag?
Yeah, Sag is my 10th. Yeah, my 10th sign and my 10th whole sign house, and it's ninth in every other system. But 29 degrees. You said it was at 23. So it would have been even with a 5-degree orb in my ninth house, but I was working in higher education.
Yeah, yeah. So I just looked at your chart with the whole sign. Yeah, and so that lunation would have been in your 10th in whole sign. So
And it's like that is part of my legacy. It's part of how I'll be known, that like I got that job and all of that, but like that wasn't actually meant for me in the end, but it was a stepping stone for me to get to where I needed to be.
yeah, which this is one of the reasons why it's could be interesting to switch back and forth if that's something you're curious about, for sure.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wanna
So
do a
then we've got fifth and 11th.
break?
Fifth and 11th. We did fifth and 11th.
Yeah, fifth and do you want to do a quick break before we get to 5 and 11?
Yeah. All right. So we are back to talk about the eclipses happening in your 5th and 11th house. So if the eclipses are in your 5th and 11th house, you have either a Capricorn rising, so that Taurus is in your 5th house and Scorpio is in your 11th house, or you have a Cancer rising, so that Taurus is in your 11th house and Scorpio is in your 5th house, right?
I hope. You're
Yes.
much better at this visual thing than I am.
Yes. Yes. I'm familiar with the Capricorn risings. I love my Capricorn risings. And so 5th house eclipse is about if Taurus is your 5th house and the moon is going to be in your 5th house and the North Node is in your 5th house, you're moving towards greater romance, creativity, play, being with children, having grandchildren, having stepchildren, teaching children, changing, and also changes potentially in your friends, your groups, your hopes and dreams for the future, the money that you get from work, and the people who support you in your work. What do you think?
Yeah. So if 14 Scorpio is in your 5th house, yeah, I have seen this. This is like dating. So this isn't 7th house. 7th house is like serious relationship. This is prior to that. This is right. This is before things get serious. This is when you start to date. This is romance.
Ugh.
This is fun. Yeah. No, it's good. It's fun. It's
But-
fun. This is the
but-
fun early part of getting to know somebody.
It is, yeah, okay, all right, fair. It's the fun part of getting to know someone, but if you're already knowing someone,
Then it's 7th house. That's not 5th house anymore.
yes, okay, but so if you already have a 7th house relationship, then a 5th house activation would look like you're talking about having kids, you're having kids, you're getting knocked up.
Yeah.
If Uranus is making an aspect to your moon, or it's Jupiter's in your 1st house, or both at the same time, or you have kids that just got married and they're trying to start a family, or if your kids are of the age where they're in college or going off to college, it could just be like that empty nester thing, like there's a change in your children.
It can also be like a resurgence of romance in an existing relationship. It could just be
a next level, like you went from texting to in person, or you went from in person to meeting the parents, right? Like, or meeting the friends, or what?
Yeah, I mean, so dating, it feels to me like the fifth house feels like it's the romance, it's sexuality,
Yes.
it's to whatever degree we indulge in that, we engage in that when we're dating, and that's a personal decision. It's whatever the early stages of relationship are, but it's fun, it's creativity. I mean, the fifth house is it's what we create, but it's fun, it's play, the fifth
It's a
house.
play that leads to something that is created. And that can be like sex that leads to children because it's fun sex. It can be like, or procreative sex, right? For the purpose of making children. Whether it's you or your children making more children. It can be like the play that you throw paint on the wall and it becomes art, like Jackson Pollock, or like any artist, really, any painter. It can be like, I feel like it's like jazz, right? It's like scat and like just like
Experimental.
yeah.
So if your fifth house is activated, it could be a really creative time as well. And if the 11th house is activated, I have seen and so my advice, if your fifth house is activated and you just met someone, is like have fun. Just enjoy the dating process. Just have fun. But 11th, if 14 Scorpio is in your 11th, this to me talks about new social group. Maybe you have some new friends coming into your life. You find a new group to hang out with, like you meet some new folks and you start hanging out with them, or you become involved in a community, some kind of community organization. Maybe you start volunteering. This is some shift in social life.
You know what else? I like another literal interpretation is like you're dating someone and they meet your friends.
Yeah.
And maybe your friendships change because of who you're dating. Or maybe who you're dating changes because of how your friends react to them. But it's a turning point in one of the two, either your dating life, your friendships, or both. Or maybe a friend becomes the person that you date. And or it could, but and also and or all the things, it could be that like your hopes and dreams change because of the person that you're dating. Hopes and dreams is an 11th house thing. It could be like your hopes and dreams and your vision of the future and like how you make the world a better place and what your life and your legacy leave behind changes because of the creativity, the play, the risk that you take, the gamble, the romance, the love, the fun. Because fifth house is also like gambling and games. So if you're in sports or you go to the casino or you play poker or you play chess, if you play games, stop playing games, y'all. Stop playing games. Stop playing
games. Games are fun. I'm nothing wrong with fifth house. I
Don't
think
play games with people's hearts. Play games on a chessboard, not with people's hearts.
Exactly. But I do think this 5th, 11th tends to be positive, this activation.
Yes, it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun and good, hopefully. Praying for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
In myself. Okay, so then finally we have the 6th house and the 12th house.
Yeah. 6th and 12th. So 6th.
Favorite houses ever. But I feel like as Virgo and Pisces, like we're just so familiar with this energy. And it's about nature and order. It's about society and dreaming. It's about your coworkers, 6th house. It's about y'all Virgos. If you don't listen to me, I'm gonna get real close. Virgos, I need you to hear this. You're burned out. You're amazing. You're brilliant. You're so skilled. You're so talented. We love you. We need you. And get yo behind an apprentice now. If you don't know that you are worthy and you are deserving and you have skills and expertise to contribute to the world, get your behind an apprentice today on May the 5th. Because you need to pass on your skills, you need to pass on your knowledge, and you need help You don't deserve to suffer. You do not deserve to have the burden and the weight of the world on your shoulders. It doesn't have to be hard. Life can be better. Life can be easy. Lean into the Pisces and dream and envision, and stop telling yourself you're not good at it. Stop telling yourself you could be better. Stop telling yourself whatever negative lie that you're justifying to yourself because you say, it's just an objective view of how I am. I just happen to be not so good at this thing.
Not good enough. Yeah.
Stop it.
You have x-rayed all the Virgos.
I know y'all too well because it's my 7th house and my South Node. I know it too well because y'all come in my office all the time, my virtual office, and tell me time and time again. And all I do is look at my computer and I say, stop. I need to get my ruler out. I need to be like the school marm with the ruler because I feel like that's what Virgo responds to, and act like I'm gonna whack you guys on your
beating yourself up. Yeah.
Stop it. You're amazing. You're brilliant. You're beautiful. You're lovely. You're the future. You're what we need. You make the world go round. Stop.
I always say,
because Neptune is in Pisces. So I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say this. Neptune is in Pisces. So I know I'm getting passionate right now. Your Virgo's like, shit.
This is very helpful.
Capricorn.
All Virgos should listen to this. We should put this in yeah.
The point is, Neptune's in Pisces in the opposite sign. The shit you say to yourself becomes reality. And most of y'all who come in my office, thank you for coming. I love you. You're coming because your Neptune is so strong that you manifest the negative shit you say to yourself. So stop effing saying it to yourself. Stop it. I'm very serious. And if you need to hear me say this to your face and look at our eyeballs together.
Such good advice. That's such a great point for Virgo right now. It really is, because our thoughts can create reality.
My ex had a Virgo moon, and everything he said out loud became true. He goes, this tractor shit. Sorry for my expletive, not expletive. This tractor shit. This tractor is broken. This tractor will never work. This tractor is horrible. This tractor was a terrible investment. Guess what that tractor was? And I told him time and time again, speak nice to that tractor. It sounds ridiculous, but I was like, speak nice to that tractor. Speak nice about that tractor. And I know in my soul, in my heart, in my gut, in my body, in every fiber of my being, if he spoke nice to that tractor, it would have been a workhorse. It would have been a savior. It would have been the best investment he ever made. It would have made his work quick. It would have made his life better. But he insisted it was shit, and it was terrible, and it was a pain in the butt, and all of the worst things ever. And that's what it was.
And it can be a question of what we focus on. I mean, I'm not an absolutist around this stuff. I think that there is something called external reality that we cannot affect just by thinking.
That is the most Virgo thing right there. But, that is the thing that all Virgos do.
I know.
This is us arguing about something and having different opinions, because this is exactly what I'm saying. But
I'm just saying, just adding it as a caveat, because I think it's important. Like, you die from a volcano erupting, you can't wish that away, but however, I also think that it's or any natural disaster, okay? Like, did
you wake up every single day being like, the volcano's gonna erupt, the volcano's gonna kill?
Just saying, we can't think everything away. I just think it's an important point. However, it's also worth thinking about how much can you affect if you just change your perspective. How much, your tractor might work because you're not kicking it and mistreating it, whatever you're doing to it because you hate it and you're telling it it's awful, and I assume you're also mistreating it.
No, Virgos treat their shit really well, but especially Virgo moons, they really take good care of things. I am a firm believer in the fact that if something goes wrong with a Virgo moon's property, because Virgo is an earth sign, and so the material objects are very important to them. So I've seen Virgo moons, current guy I'm dating, Virgo moon, very different from the last guy I dated with the Virgo moon, Virgo 7th house, so moon in the 7th. That's why it's happening. Didn't know this, didn't select them on that basis, but current guy, he has clothes from 30 years ago that are so vibrant in their colors. I was like, did you only put that through the wash once? No, it's been through the wash 52 times 30, because he wears that fucking shit every single week for the past 30 years and you wouldn't even know. His socks, like everything, it's like Kris. I'm like, I wear something for 3 months and that shit is done. And this man, I'm like, what detergent do you use? And he's just like, oh, Tide. And I'm like, how, first of all, how do you not know? And then second of all, like, what is the magic touch that you have on your material objects that like you take such good care of? The people, Virgo moons take exquisite care of everything. They clean their houses, they clean their dogs' buttholes, they clean, I mean, maybe everyone should, but some people don't know that, okay? There's really people out there who don't know to clean your dog's buttholes, and they be dog odors for life. They clean off the dingleberries for dog. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little.
And you know, but the other thing is, like, I was just saying this the other day to a Taurus rising, that like there's no rest for a Virgo, you know.
Never.
No
They
rest.
don't. And they eat a lot because they're very hungry. And you know why they're very hungry? Because they work really hard.
They're burning all their energy up. It's a Vata energy in Ayurveda. Like they're burning all their energy up with worrying and anxiety.
Yeah, a lot of
and
worry and anxiety.
and needing things to be perfect, you know, and so I love the Taurian contrast to Virgo, which is like, let's enjoy the moment. Let's just be happy at the lake and put our feet up. We don't need to be cleaning the cabin every 14 minutes, you know.
Yeah. I'm not even going to go into my whole diatribe of, I love y'all Virgos. I just want to say that. So I don't want you to think this is.
So much love just came through your
I love you. I care about you. I want the best for you. Okay.
An actual sermon to Virgo.
My Capricorn sun.
Virgo
See
ministry.
the structure that you could create for your life to make it even more efficient.
But yeah, no, and that Neptune opposition to Virgo has been deep, like profound for Virgos. I mean, it certainly has been for me, but it would be for anybody with significant Virgo placements, because Neptune is, you know, outer planet, and we started out talking about Pluto. We don't have to, I don't think we have time to get into Neptune, but it's a huge transit, so it's really significant for Virgos and Pisces, but I think for Virgos in particular, because it's an opposite energy, it can feel pretty uncomfortable for a Virgo.
Okay, so
but,
I'm on a total tangent because I was saying 6 and 12, Virgo Pisces, like nature versus, you know, not nature.
And for clarity here, the Virgo is associated with the
happening.
6.
Yeah, it's not happening in the Virgo Pisces axis. And we're just saying in the natural chart, 6 and 12th is Virgo Pisces. So if the North Node is in Taurus, that means you're Gemini rising or Sagittarius rising, which happens to be on the mutable axis that Pisces and Virgo are on. So y'all just might be feeling kind of this Virgo Pisces energy that you're not used to. And so you're having to deal with the habits, right? We said 3, 6, 9, and 12. That's how we started this, was about the habits with your siblings, with your communication, with your minds, your mind, your thoughts. That's all third house, your memories. With 6th house, your coworkers, your pets. That's why I talked about.
But yeah, we talk about Virgo because the 6th house is daily life, it's daily routines, and this is all very Virgo, you know.
And then 6th house, your religion, your spiritual practices, and then 12th house are the habits that keep us from or support us in our legacy and becoming who we are and what we need to be. And people with strong 12th house placements are famous. Like, look at Lady Gaga's chart, look at like Joe Biden's chart, look at Obama's chart, like look at any famous person. If they don't have 12th house placements, don't come at me, but like, look at your favorite famous person and look at their 12th
more
house.
often than you might think. Yeah, this is Maurice Fernandez's point. It's such a great point. The 12th house is associated with the public, with the sort of collective unconscious and with the collective. And so sometimes a strong 12th house placements can mean someone who's good at connecting with the public as a whole, and it makes them famous.
And I forgot what I was going to say.
But so yeah, so this lunation, if 14 Scorpio is in your sixth house, this could be a time for new routines. It could be time to start a new diet, a new exercise routine. It could be time to adopt a pet. It could be a time to
Get a doctor's appointment.
get a doctor's appointment.
Check out. Get your annual physical.
Health. Yeah,
Have
sixth house is
your blood
also
work
health.
done.
Yeah,
Get the
pay
scan.
attention. Yeah.
Take advantage of your health insurance benefits.
And this could be like a change in routines at work. I don't see it associated so much with like a new job, but it's more like maybe a shift at work.
I think it's a shift. And I think that the shift is
Daily
pretty
life.
subtle, because I think the shift is I'm starting to realize that maybe this job is not what I want to be doing in 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, year and a half. And maybe it's run its course because it's a Saturn story, or whatever kind of a nodal story, or whatever kind of story it is. But you're realizing like this job is no longer for you or your boss or your manager, or like you're applying for jobs and you just can't get a job. And you're like, why can't I get a job? They should hire me. Because you're supposed to be an entrepreneur. That's why you're not getting a job, because you're not supposed to be doing this anymore, because it's an eclipse and your story's changing and you've reached a turning point in your life.
I mean, yeah, or the sixth house, this can feel somewhat minor, but it's very Virgoan in the sense like it can be about establishing new routines, which is like breaking out of a samskara, a habit. And it's sort of Virgoan in the sense that you've got to work to establish the routine, and over time it becomes habit. So this is how we establish new healthy routines. They take work when you start, and then you become more efficient, Virgo, very efficient, Virgo, as you go. And so it could be a time to work at establishing new routines, new health routines, or just that your daily life is highlighted in some way. But the 12th, now to just, for me, if 14 Scorpio is in your 12th, the one thing I see, I have to say more frequently than anything else, is a significant lunation, like an eclipse here in the 12th, any lunation falling in the 12th, especially an eclipse. Funny enough, I see this associated with a breakup. This is the aftermath of a breakup, because the 12th is solitude. Yeah. Yeah, or can be solitude. So I see often, I've seen this frequently, where it's the pain, and it can be painful.
It is
This,
painful.
this can be really feeling your solitude and feeling lonely.
You know, I think I said before, when the eclipses, when we're talking about 1st and 7th, I was like, oh yeah, that's like when my breakup started. Well, the nodes move retrograde, they move reverse. So after they're in your 1st and your 7th, they move to your 6th and your 12th. And that's exactly what happened. After, like, that's when my breakup started, was Pisces Virgo, South Node Pisces, and then South Node moved into my 12th into Aquarius, and I moved up to upstate New York, middle of nowhere, to be completely alone, because it was the aftermath of my breakup.
Wow. That's,
yeah, and I needed the healing, and I needed the solitude, and I needed the alone time.
and I have a couple, I mean, which is a wonderful point, Vanessa Guy makes this point. I keep going back to her talk for Oprah last year, because she just made such interesting, some really profound points in that talk, where, she's sort of says like the darkness, quote, the absence of light is a renewal. Nothing comes in spring if we don't have a winter.
That is exactly right. So the 12th and the 8th, sometimes they're dark houses. The 6th is too, because they don't see quote unquote geometrically the ascendant the way that they should. So 2, 8, 6, and 12 are only 30 or 150 degrees away from the ascendant, so they don't see the ascendant by proper geometry.
In Hellenistic
ancient astrology. And so we call them quote unquote dark houses. We also call them dark houses for other reasons, because when the sun is in the 12th, it's dawn, and when the sun is in the 8th, it's it is still light outside, but the sun is setting very quickly and it's about to be dark. And then when it's in the sixth house, it's after dusk and it is dark out. And then in the second house, it's right before dawn. And that is when it's darkest, is before the dawn. So they literally are the dark houses for whatever reason. And for all of those reasons and many more. And I do think that, I take caution in saying this, which is why I said all those words just now, in saying this next word, which is death, because that is like the simple way of saying it is like, oh, it's death. And it's like the 12th house and the 8th house, they're not death, right? The 6th house is not just like illness that leads to 8th house death. The 12th house is not just like your ghost, your spirit after you're dead. It's like you can die and be reborn. You can have your ego, you can have your identity, you can have your title, you can have your life as you know it completely change so that you metaphorically die and then become reborn in a very Scorpio, which we have the Scorpio, drum roll, way, right? Like where you are the phoenix that rises from the ashes. So I'm not saying you die. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like the life as you know it has come to a turning point where you have a beautiful opportunity to finally create the life that you want, the life of your dreams.
What I after experiencing this myself, it occurred to me finally, if the 12th house is about transcendence, it's about spirituality, it's that time when maybe we're feeling most alone, when we're feeling unloved. This is the 12th house lunation. Can we connect to the larger spiritual, whatever your beliefs are, like the larger fact, as far as I'm concerned, that we are all always loved, that we're always loved in this transcendent sort of sense. And so for me, if you've got this 12th house lunation going on and you're not feeling great about yourself, feeling lonely, like I think it's a fantastic opportunity to connect to, but I'm always loved and I'm always lovable, no matter what my circumstances are, no matter who's around me, no matter what people say to me, no matter what they seem to think about me. We are all always loved and always lovable.
And exactly to your point, that if you don't know why, and to what I was saying before about Virgos and like that I'm not good enough, it's like, excuse me, wake up. You're beautiful. You're amazing. You're one in 400 million billion. You're amazing. If you don't know why you are lovable, why would anyone else love you? So get your ish together and figure out why you love yourself and know that, because it is tied to the second house in a way, right? Because of like the sextile.
This is a profound, the 12th house is spirituality. It is the collective unconscious. It is our shadow. And so this is a profound lesson of the 12th, I think. And it's what you're talking about. We have to go through the grieving process. We have to go through the metaphorical death. But and can we find a way to embrace it? Because if we can love ourselves when we are feeling the worst, that is a life skill and a spiritual skill that will carry you, like it I think it's a profound thing to learn. And
And
I
the
think
person who's not loving you, the person who's not loving you at your best doesn't deserve you at your, the person who is not loving you at your worst does not deserve you at your best, Marilyn Monroe, right? Time to move on from them and leave them behind. They're not part of your future. They're not part of your story. They're part of you realizing and helping you realize how badass you are, what your worth is, and that it's so much more. And that y'all are just on different paths and different parallels at this point in time, that they weren't or haven't appreciated you for all that you are. Because the invitation then is that you appreciate you and you find people who appreciate you as you are and have been and were and everything that you've gone through.
There's a way to sort of like, if we are spinning, because this, I have witnessed and experienced this 12th house lunation can be tough. If you are spinning, like if you are questioning your value, your worth, connecting to that larger sense of being loved, being lovable, in whatever sense you know, your spirituality, I hope reflects that belief, because you know, I think that that's the essence of spirituality. You know, it's we prevent ourselves from sinking, you know. It's we don't need to go into a spiral of self-loathing or anything else, you know. It's really,
Yeah, just get after it. And we call the 12th house like the behind the scenes work, like the dark room, like when you process photos and stuff, because it sextiles the 10th house or the midheaven, your 12th house sextiles that, and it gives us the work. It supports the work that we do and the legacy that we leave if we're willing to take the time to be by ourselves. Like I just had Saturn going through my 12th house. I was alone for a long time and I needed the time to be alone. And so you need to figure out, like, why am I being given this time when I'm just like craving other people? Well, you're craving a crutch. You're not really craving other people. You're craving an escape from yourself. So address the stuff in yourself that you're not willing to face and become your own best friend right now. Because if you can be your own best friend, you'll attract the best friends and the lovers and the romantic partners and the life partners and the soul partners that are actually meant for you.
Yeah, I don't try your best. This is my sort of way of thinking, like this is how to avoid escapism, which is also the 12th house, the drugs, the escapism, the numbing. It is if we can love ourselves when we're down, when we're feeling unlovable, like that's you're being your own best friend there in the best possible way, you know.
Yeah, and it can also be retreats, right? Like the 12th house is large institutions. So it can be the government, it's the collective unconscious, like you mentioned before. It can be hospitals, like institutions like that, like prisons, right? Because sometimes our mind is the only prison, going back to my point about the shit you say to yourself, 3rd house, 9th house, 6th house, 12th house. It can be going far away from home, 9th house to 12th house, in order to heal. So that's where you see retreats and ashrams, like literally just going on a retreat, going into treatment can be something. So if you know someone, like maybe you're not going into treatment, but maybe someone you know is going into treatment and you need to support them and you're like showing up for like family day or something like that. That's real.
And this 12th house lunation it is really about, it can be tough, but the broader picture of our lives, which is what astrology helps us get, shows us that we can't always be active. There need to be fallow periods. There need to be periods of rest and retreat and withdrawal and solitude. And hey, let's make it as nice as we can. Let's take baths every day. Let's light the candles, whatever it is makes you feel awesome. You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So that's the eclipses through all the houses for all 12 signs.
We did it.
We did it.
It was fun.
We did it. All right, so we're going to go into the
next. And just to wrap up, like the big picture here of the past, what is it, 18 months or so of eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio. We get one more later this year, but these two eclipses, this is really like, this is the end of a cycle.
And the beginning of a new one. Oh, and you said something about 6 months, but I think it's important to note that, excuse me, every 87 to 90 days, and Georgia Stathis says this as well, is when we see either the beginning of the new story of the next eclipse or the wrap up or the sort of turning point of the current eclipse. So you might start something, think something might feel subtle 87 to 90 days, the halfway point between the two eclipses is another trigger. So think back to, I think was it January? It would have been Capricorn, it would have been Capricorn. It would have been Sag Capricorn. No, it would have been Capricorn,
January.
Aquarius, Capricorn Aquarius season, because it would have been fixed and movable. So Capricorn movable, fixed Aquarius. So it would have been in that season, would have been the 90 days. Like right on the cusp, because it's close to the cusp right now. It's close to like early Aquarius, early Taurus, early Scorpio, early Leo, and then we'll feel it Leo, end of Leo season. No. Beginning of Leo season, end of Cancer season, because that Cancer is movable, cardinal, and then Leo is fixed. So that's July 20th. So we'll, and that is exactly when Pluto squares the nodes 3 times, and then when the nodes change sign, July 22nd, 24th, and 25th, I think, are the 3 times Pluto squares the nodes. So that week of July, like even July 30th to July 27th is going to be to August 1st. It's going to be intense. So just remember, mark your calendars. What happens now is coming back end of July, early August.
Yep. I really think so. This is all like this beginning of the year has been such a setup for fall and for the Leo, you know, for Venus retrograde in Leo. But the one, what was I going to say? Well, I mean, so Taurus and Scorpio, you know, you're finally getting out of the spotlight pretty soon. You'll get one more lunation at 5 Taurus, the eclipse at October 28th of this year. But after that, you're out of the water. You know, this has really probably been a time of substantial change for Scorpio and Taurus, in particular. These have been happening in their sign, in their signs.
Yeah.
And Aries and Libra are going to get it next, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
That's my first 7th house.
There we go. That's what we got. All right, so we've got now the second week of May, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna say real quick, this is what I was gonna say. Funny enough, I noticed that I observed personally that the eclipse might events associated with an illumination or an eclipse tend to happen like a few weeks before, a month before. It's almost like generally I find the lunation sets up the event and then it happens. It's not like something happens and then you get the eclipse. It's the other way around. And it can be a little ways out. It can be the prior lunation, so a month out, a few weeks out of whatever the event is that it's associated with.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so second half of May.
Yeah. No, not second half, the second week, right?
Last 2 weeks of May, we're gonna have a May part 2.
We'll have a May part 2, yeah. So now do you want to talk about like May 6th through 14th, so that we get up to Jupiter square Pluto, Venus trine Saturn, May 12th? Or
yeah, just to wrap up the first half of May, we have Ceres stationing direct, going direct at 23 Virgo. Ceres has been at the final degrees of Virgo since like last fall, just hanging out in Virgo. And it just direct on May 6th, and then it'll move forward again. So Virgos are hopefully feeling good with Ceres, taking care of them right now. And then Venus moves to Cancer May 7, May 9. So this will be a nice warm Venusian month, hopefully for folks. And then May 9, Sun conjunct Uranus. This is the day of potential surprises. Because we can't anticipate a surprise, so just keep your eye out. But hopefully it's fun. Hopefully there's something fun happening for you, because we also have Mars sextile Ceres that day, and Venus just having moved into Cancer. So maybe it's just a warm environment that you find yourself in, but also one that's fun or interesting or new. Venus trining and sextiling the nodes on May 10th, the following day, and then May 12th. Like you said, this is potentially a pretty romantic day.
Romance.
Maybe Venus trine Saturn, and then Saturn square Juno.
Saturn
Mercury
could be the
sextile Venus.
contract, and Venus is relationships. Venus is also money. And so it's like, you know, you sign the deal, you sign the contract, or like you make a contract with your heart, whether it's a friend or a lover or a new house or a new job or even a severance package. It's sort of like some finality, some handshake, some signature agreement that, and it really is for the best. And so I know that I get on like Fishbowl and Reddit and stuff like that for corporations. And I know that there's a lot of companies that are talking about first week in May, second week of May. There's like a lot going on in terms of layoffs and things like that. And so I just want to say, if you're a person out there getting a severance package right now, I'm sorry. And also, this is the best blessing in disguise I think that you can receive. And I think if you can use this Uranus energy to get the divine download and get the divine inspiration and use the energy, then and if you don't know how, seriously, come see me or Kris, because we like, and I don't even mean this as a plug, I mean this because like this is great freaking energy for you right now. So read your own chart, or like just like Google all of the astrology or whatever it is that you need, but like don't let it go. Use it. Go with the energy. Ride the wave right now. And yeah, just do it. Invest like $500 of your severance package in a Facebook ad for your new course, or like whatever it is, but like invest some of that money in something to help your future, because you've got it right now. And don't wallow. Definitely like put your resume out there, put your LinkedIn thing to like, I'm open to jobs, because you're the person that people are like, oh, thank goodness, I'm gonna snatch you up right now. Like I've been waiting for you.
You know, but we're not plugging ourselves necessarily. It's you know, to see an astrologer that you connect with. But I have to say, you know, a session could change the course of someone's life, because the gift of astrology around work, when we can look at the transits and say, hey, this is a good time for you to go in X direction, to you know, to make some kind of major move. We're not talking ourselves up. This is genuinely helpful knowledge. This is guidance that we, you know, that's in the chart. We're here to translate it. So
Yeah. So I think that was
just had a client say the other day, she came and you know, we had a talk about what her 10th house was all about, and she was just like, this is so helpful. Thank you so much. So.
Yeah, I've been talking to folks a lot about like their ikigai. I've been talking to folks about like how to become entrepreneurs, how to magnetize your ideal client. Who is your ideal client? What are the gifts that you have to offer them? Like, how do you use astrology as an entrepreneur? How do you use astrology if you're laid off or you're retiring? Whether you want a job or you need the income or you're looking for a hobby, you want to make the world a better place. You know, how do you monetize? Like, okay, so should I teach, or should I do online, or should I do like a passive income? Should I be selling a physical object or information, or should I be hourly? Should I be, you know, Amazoning, like drop shipping? Like, should I be the face of my brand, or should I come up with like a name? Like, is my website, do I have the right colors? Do I have the right fonts? Do I have the right branding? Like, what is the timing? Am I supposed to be pushing, or should I be retreating?
All of these things we
All
can
of
talk
the
about with
things.
astrology.
There's so much. Please let
Yeah.
us help you.
Yeah. And it's just super helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think that's the first 2 weeks of May, right?
Yeah. We'll see everyone talk about we've got some big some significant planetary action happening the second half of May. We had Jupiter squaring Pluto. and our May 19 new moon. So we'll be back to talk about those in a couple weeks. Like, subscribe, comment, share, tell your friends if you find this helpful. We'd love to know comments.
Yeah, tell us in the comments, like, what would you like to see us focus on more next month? What did you love about this month? What questions do you have about what we shared? So that we can help make this better for you.
And hey, if you have an eclipse story too, those are really fun. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Awesome. See you guys next time. Thanks so much. Thanks, Kris, for joining me.
Thanks,
Take
Taylor.
All right, bye now.